pas fous, nous ne sommes pas ivres, nous sommes juste dans la joie. Une joie profonde, nos cœurs elles inondent. Cette joie, elle vient du ciel, non, nous ne sommes pas fous.
Welcome to Sing With Your Feet, the podcast in which we seek out joy. The podcast in which we are willing to drop our expectations to fully embrace with expectancy what our lives have in store for us. The podcast in which we discover the myriad ways our destiny is trying to help us sparkle again, if we would just open our eyes. My name is Lily Fields, and I'm going to be your fairy godmother for the next half hour or so. Now, Lily, I'm going to stop you right there. I'm numb. I don't even know where to start. I don't know what joy would feel like if it slapped me across the face, and there is nothing that brings me pleasure anymore. I slammed the door on things I loved years ago, and I just don't see any way back. As for you being numb, oh, darling, I know where you're coming from. There are times in our life where joy seems so far away that we are literally deaf, dumb, and blind to joy. Today, I'm going to suggest a very simple exercise to help you find joy at a very, very, very small scale. You don't learn to play the violin from reading a Stravinsky score. You learn it first by holding the instrument in your hands. But I will grant you that at this stage of your life, you feel like pleasure is the last thing you would ever have time to think about. But I'll bet that you have a bunch of little things, little annoyances in your life that, if they were gone, your life would be a lot more pleasurable. I'm going to tell a few stories about how examples from my own life as Cinderella, my life as a wife and a mother, in which I learned how to sing with my feet. Yes, today is the day, my friends, when we are going to finally learn what it means to sing with your feet. And I get it right now that there is no way in the world to get back to those things that used to make you sparkle. I'm going to suggest to you that getting that sparkle back in your life is not necessarily entirely up to you. What I want for you is to be favorably disposed to the idea that you can sparkle again. Once you're willing to accept this and be disposed to the idea, then the sky's the limit. Being aware of what brings you joy, it makes you aware. And being aware means that you are listening. And listening means that you might hear. And believe it or not, once you hear, you might just be able to act. For all my love of big ideas, there is one word that I absolutely detest. It's become a kind of a buzzword these days. It's the word mindfulness. For me, this word conjures up a perfectly balanced set of stones piled up on top of each other, or a quiet fountain bubbling at the entrance of an expensive spa. Because it's a word I associate with generally being zen, a thing that I am most assuredly not, it's a word that raises my hackles without me actually knowing what it means. So let's take a quick look at the dictionary so we don't go throwing the baby out with the bathwater, okay? Mindfulness. The quality or state of being conscious or aware of something. Or a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment, while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations. So mindfulness is simply being aware of what's going on right this very instant. You want to try something? Let's be mindful together for a second. Let's take a breath together. Did you inhale through your mouth or through your nose? Were your eyes closed or were they open? Are you sitting or are you standing? Was the air cold or was it warm? Your answers to these questions are facts. You were being aware of the present moment. Now, I want to suggest that there is a way to bring joy back into your life, even when you're feeling numb, and that it starts with just being aware. It's called savoring. Let me ask you a question. Are you a coffee person? How do you take your coffee? Do you take it with cream, sugar? What color is the perfect cup of coffee for you? Are you more of a Dunkin' Donuts or a Starbucks kind of gal? I want to describe a moment from my day, and I want you to imagine that you are doing all these activities with me, all right? It's early. Very, very, very early. Everyone else in my house is still asleep. I sneak out of bed and into the bathroom to get dressed because that's where I put my clothes out the night before. I tiptoe to the kitchen, turn on the coffee maker. It's an Italian coffee maker, the metal kind that you use on a stovetop. I stand in the kitchen, in the dark, listening to the sounds of the morning. The birds outside the window, a car on the intersection downstairs. I see the colored traffic lights through the window changing in their course. I open the refrigerator and take out the cream. The refrigerator squeaks a little bit. I drop a few drops of vanilla into my coffee cup, and then the cream. My coffee cup is a robin's egg blue, and that actually matters. The coffee percolates, making that rushing, whooshing sound. I take it off the stove, and I pour my first cup of the day. It is 4:10 a.m. Before I take my first sip, though, I walk over to the bay window. I hold my robin's egg blue coffee mug between my hands, and I inhale. Deeply. The sweet smell of vanilla, the rich smell of the cream, the warmth of the cup. I look out over the city lights, and I whisper, "Good morning, Mulhouse. Here's to you." And then I take my first sip. And the first sip hits my tongue like a symphony. It is a delight of bitterness and sweetness and caffeinated goodness. I can't help but smile. And as I take my second sip, I hear a strange noise outside. It's coming from the butte, the Reberg, the hills that edge the town. It's an animal cry, many animals actually. It's the gibbons, these little apes that live at the zoo up on the top of the hill, and they're singing their morning song. It's as if they heard me say good morning, and they were singing back their reply. From outside, there's nothing remarkable about this morning routine. But I promise you, every single step of this routine brings me joy. Not having to decide what I'm going to wear, joy. The quiet, joy. The coffee, joy. The cream, joy. The vanilla, joy. The robin's egg blue mug that fits just perfectly in my hands, joy. The traffic lights, the first sip, the gibbons. When we're numb, when we have forgotten what joy feels like, we need to start small. We need to notice the tiny little things that light up our senses, even in the tiniest ways. Our senses are one of the most surefire ways to help us start recognizing what joy might look and feel like again. This is very small. This is starting with tiny, minuscule little moments of mindfulness, connecting to our senses in the present. Just to get you thinking, what's your favorite color? What would happen if the next time you saw that color in the wild, you took a picture of it? For me, that color is, no surprise, robin's egg blue. That color just makes me feel so happy. So the other day, my boys and I were in town, and we saw a robin's egg blue colored Vespa on the street. I whipped out my phone and took pictures of it. Later in the day, when I was flipping through my photos, I landed on that robin's egg blue Vespa, and my heart pitter-pattered all over again. Joy. Or what about music? Is there a song that you used to love? The year was 1988. And every time the song Shoulder to Cry On by Tommy Page came on the radio, which was Power 108 in Cleveland, thank you very much, I would record it off the radio onto a cassette tape. I have been at this for a very, very long time. Life is so much easier now that we don't have to wait for our favorite song to play. Now, all you can do is just run to Spotify or YouTube and play it as often as you want. I firmly believe that music has a powerful ability to make us feel things. And just a little piece of unsolicited advice from your fairy godmother. Make sure the music you are listening to makes you feel the things that you want to feel. There is an African song that says this. It's in French. I'll translate afterwards. Je loue avec ma voix. S'il me manque la voix, je loue avec mes mains. S'il me manque les mains, je loue avec mes pieds. Et s'il me manque les pieds, je loue avec mon âme. S'il me manque l'âme, c'est que je loue là-haut. All right, let me translate that for you. I sing with my voice, and if my voice goes missing, I sing with my hands. And if my hands go missing, I sing with my feet. If my feet go missing, I sing with my soul. And if my soul goes missing, it's that I'm singing upstairs. The first time I heard this song, I thought it was just about the most morbid thing I had ever heard. But that was only until I went through postpartum depression. Motherhood did more than just cramp my style. It plunged me into a very dark place. Exhaustion, both physical and mental. I lived on an emotional roller coaster of my own emotions and those of a toddler who was, and still is, highly sensitive. My hormones were all over the place. Postpartum depression spent a few days sunning itself on the doorstep and then moved in without being invited, like a neighborhood cat that one day you find sleeping under the covers of your bed. The experience of postpartum depression, something I hope that none of you ever have to live through, it's like a dark, overstimulating, loud, scary, and really stinky tunnel. In the depths of postpartum depression, nothing has any flavor anymore. No sound doesn't make your heart race. No music can bring you even a modicum of joy. Touch, the love language you yourself have always needed in order to feel like you exist, it fills you with rage. We've all had the experience of losing our voice. Laryngitis, for example, or singing too loudly with Color Me Bad at Blossom Music Center in 1991. Losing your voice is like a feeling of impotence. Well, imagine having two small children prone to getting themselves in trouble, and imagine that you have lost your voice. That feeling of impotence cannot be overstated. What do? Well, you start using your hands. You clap so much that your palms hurt. You snap your fingers to get their attention. Imagine for a second that in the midst of your voice extinction, you burn your hand on the oven and you have to hold an ice pack wrapped in a towel over your right hand. Then what do? That is when you have to start singing with your feet. You have to do things differently. You can't give up. Those two little lives depend on you. So here I was. I had a baby and a toddler. I had one pair of jeans that I knew fit, although they were not particularly attractive. I wore them every day, unless they got spit up on by the baby. I had a sweater, which was my go-to because it was easy access for nursing. I had been so desperately holding everything together and trying to take care of everybody else, as one does in the midst of an upheaval, like bringing a new baby home, that I had not noticed that I'd been wearing the same thing for days. Days. I'd been wearing the same jeans and black sweater for, let's say, conservatively, 4 days in a row, because I'd been too stressed out first thing in the morning to pick out anything else. I'd lost my voice. I burned my hand. I had plenty of other things to wear, plenty of prettier things to wear that probably would have fit just as well. But since I had relegated any decision about what I was supposed to wear to the 30 seconds before my family was supposed to go anywhere, I couldn't take the time to think about choosing anything else. My clothes were stained. I had a seam in the sweater that was unraveling. I was worried and overwhelmed with other stuff, and this was literally the last thing I should be worrying about. I was miserable, and I felt hideous. It's really surprising that the clothes lasted that many days, but what had to happen happened. The baby spit up on my easy access sweater, and I ended up with a shoulder full and a calf full of baby puke, and moms, you know what I'm talking about. And this happened just before nap time. I put the boys down for their naps. I stepped into the boudoir, which is what I call my closet and have since I lived in Orlando. I had a huge bubble of frustration pressing on my heart. Finally, it burst, and I sat on the floor of my closet crying. I stank of curdled milk, unwashed hair, and misery. When the feeling, which was a potent mix of feeling invisible, feeling unhappy, feeling tired, feeling lonely, feeling angry, finally completed its cycle, I grabbed another sweater and a pair of jeans. I wasn't even sure that they would fit. While I stood there, something else caught my eye. It was a pretty maternity t-shirt I had loved wearing when I was pregnant. I hadn't even thought of wearing it since I had the baby, but I just realized it had buttons on it. Maybe I could wear it. Theoretically, that would be easy access. Just looking at it made me happy. If I were to wear it, I'd have to take a shower, something I hadn't done in so long I couldn't even remember when the last one I had taken was. Thinking about the shower, I took out some clean underwear and some socks and I attached them to the hanger. And while I was at it, I grabbed a skirt that I was sure would fit. I took out all these things and I hung them up in the bathroom where I knew the next morning I could, if I tried really hard and made sure to tell my husband of my intention, that I could manage to get a shower before things got crazy. Throughout the rest of the day, from time to time, I'd go into the bathroom to get something and I would see that outfit hanging there. And I started to have a tiny glimmer of hope. I was looking forward to the next day so that I could wear it. I was looking forward to the next day. The next day, my husband and I conspired to make sure I got a shower. I even took a few minutes to blow dry my hair. I got dressed, and I actually wanted to leave the house. I wanted to take our boys someplace because I felt like a human being again. The benevolent, unstressed Lily, who had gotten together my outfit for me, had made my life better, and I thanked her. During nap time that day, I took a few minutes to choose what I would wear for the next day, thinking about how I wanted to feel the next day. I wanted to feel pretty. I wanted to feel alive. So I picked out clothes that I thought would help me feel that way, and I put them all together and put them in the bathroom. It took a long time for the postpartum depression to get under control. Didn't take that long for me to get my voice back, though. But this small step of caring for future me was the first step to wanting to get help. This act, this little tiny thing, by getting out what I was going to wear the next day, meant I was treating myself like an honored guest. Listen to me. No one knows how to love you the way you know how to love you. Let me say that again. No one knows how to love you the way you know how to love you. Maybe you don't know how to ask for what you need, or maybe you don't have anyone in your life who could do it for you. I want you to start doing it for yourself. Do you remember a few weeks ago, I quoted Einstein, who said that insanity is doing the same things over and over and expecting different results? To fend off that insanity, we need to stop insisting on the methods that aren't working. If we lose our voice, we need to start singing with our hands. And if our hands go missing, we need to start singing with our feet. We need to start doing things differently. We're going to start singing with our feet.
Alors on chante, on danse, on fait la fête, comme au ciel. On chante.
When I was young, very young, like 10 years old, if someone asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, I said I wanted to sing opera. I wanted to be the leading soprano with the Metropolitan Opera. Yes, I was 10 years old and I wanted to sing opera. This, in no small part, fed my absolute obsession with the Broadway musical The Phantom of the Opera. Oh my goodness, I was obsessed. What I think I loved so much about it was how Christine Daae didn't have to do anything to be discovered. She was just singing in her dressing room one day, and some mysterious, albeit somewhat creepy, stalkery type found her and turned her into a star. I think I came to believe that being discovered was how it worked. I glossed over the hard work portion of the program to the being on stage at the l'Opéra Garnier portion. Our dreams are sometimes outsized and are not objectively realizable. But isn't there a little flavor we can bring back in? By the time my husband and I were on the cusp of leaving the United States to move back to France in 2007, I had stopped singing entirely. It took only one terribly humiliating experience of trying to make it as a singer for my very feeble self-worth and my unsurmountable pride to get in the way and decide that if this is what it took to make it, then I didn't want to do it. I was so terrified of rejection that I preferred to cut off my dream than to feel rejection for my voice ever again. In the summer before our return to France, I spent a month in Uganda with an NGO. We spent a few days in Kabale, and then we went to Barara, a mid-sized city. And then we drove what seemed like a lifetime to Kishanji village, an itty-bitty, tiny little village with no electricity in the mountains. It was just across the lake from Rwanda and down the hill from Congo. There, we were going to help build a school. My joy was in spending time with the children of the village, some orphans, some not. All were very, very, very poor. My heart yearned to provide each one of them with something, but in the end, they provided for me. Now let's say this together. I am not an outdoorsy kind of gal. I am an indoorsy kind of gal, if you know what I mean. This really shouldn't come as a surprise to you, I suppose. One day, one of the kids in the village said, "Let's go to the lake." I didn't even know there was a lake, and ever amenable, I said, "Okay, let's go." Now, capital letters, hear my voice. I am not a hiker. Let's be clear. You understand. So what is a walk in the hill country to get to a lake? For some is a 2-hour nightmare for another. However, one of the children, a boy of about 9 named Pai, said, "Don't worry, Mirembe." Mirembe was my Ruchiga name, the name that they gave me, which means peace. "Just watch my feet," he said. Then he added imperiously, "But sing, Mirembe. I like it when you sing." Pai's feet looked about how you would imagine them. This was a little boy who had probably never worn a pair of shoes in his life. They looked like hardened tree bark. For 2 hours, every time Pai would remove his foot, I would put my foot where he had just left. For 2 hours, through rivers, forests, landslides, and I'm not exaggerating, I wish I were, I followed him, and I sang. When the path would become treacherous, Pai would slow down and scold me, "Mirembe, you're not singing." And oddly, I was not afraid. I knew he would make it. Pai, although he was just a child, he'd done this dozens of times before. And I was singing, and that was something that had always held me together. When we arrived at the lake, the aforementioned lake across from which you can see Rwanda on the other side, it was the most breathtaking view. I wish I had photos. But nothing will ever do that view justice. Not after 2 hours of following in the steps of a little boy with hardened tree bark for feet who liked it when I sang. My husband and I moved to France that fall. I still had no intention of ever singing. 2 years later, I volunteered to be a camp counselor for a summer. I took my guitar, for whatever reason, to a planning meeting, and that's where I met Aline. I left, not thinking twice about it. Several weeks later, my home phone rang, and it was this woman who I couldn't even quite place in my mind saying, "I want you to come sing with the group I direct." I said, "No, I don't sing anymore. Plus, I didn't know any of these French songs," but she wouldn't take a no for an answer. And I remembered Pai and how he told me, "Sing, Mirembe. I like it when you sing." So the next thing I knew, Aline thrust a microphone in my hand and told me to sing. I had never sung into a handheld microphone in my life, and there was quite a learning curve. But now I sing again. I sing at funerals. I sing with an orchestra. I sing at little living room concerts, and I sing several times a month for an audience of thousands. I have no delusions about a career, but I am using what I have and finding immense satisfaction knowing that in this small thing, I am sparkling again. But I would never have done it had I not heard Pai tell me that he liked it when I sang. I would never have done it if some woman I didn't even know called me. But I was willing. And being willing, opening up our hearts and accepting who we are and what makes us special, is part of the hard work of what we're doing here. Being willing makes us aware. And when we're aware, we listen. And when we listen, we can hear. Now, I want to introduce you to someone. Her name is Dottie Delphinium. Dottie really is her own best narrator, so I want to open up the floor for her to tell you her story.
Dear Lily, I want to thank you for creating this podcast. So many women out there like you and like me get completely lost in motherhood. We forget that we are a whole person apart from our little people. We need a voice and some gentle guidance. Thank you, fairy godmother, to help us take the steps to finding our magic again. I quit my job as a pastry chef 1 week before my first daughter was born. She's 12 now. I thought for sure staying at home was exactly what I wanted. I'm still glad I made that decision. I believe it was something I was meant to go through, but it wasn't nearly as easy or as fun as I thought it would be. Growing up, I had 2 working parents and was jealous of my friends and other classmates that had stay-at-home moms. I was a latchkey kid. I fantasized about my future and being home every day with my kids, doing fun projects, cooking healthy meals, keeping house. 9 years. That's how long I was a stay-at-home mom. It was nothing like I imagined it would be. Sure, my girls and I had some really fun times, but most of the time, for me, it was really hard and isolating. I don't think I was really strong in who I was before I had my children. It wasn't until I completely lost myself in motherhood and gave everything of myself to my children, my husband, and everyone else in my life that I realized that I didn't know who I was at all. I remember when my girls were preschoolers and coming out of this fog and thinking, who the heck am I anymore? Oh, well, the antidepressants I was finally taking were helping lift that fog too. More on that soon. In my teen years, I was a singer, an actress. I was even voted most likely to be famous in high school. So I went to music school and majored in voice for a couple of years, but I still wasn't confident. I still didn't believe in myself and eventually gave that dream up because I wasn't finding joy in the things that made me happy anymore. The best gift my children gave me was a mirror to really look at myself and realize that I needed to be better. I needed to be better for them, and I needed to be better for me. They deserved a role model that was confident, who used her talents, who didn't shy away from the world. I have 2 girls, and I wanted them to be strong, independent women. So, first and foremost, I focused on my mental health. I faced demons of my past that were writing my story for me. I learned that we make a lot of stories up about ourselves. We 100% have the power to change our story, rewrite it even. We are not our thoughts. I took the antidepressants. I started doing yoga, meditating, and overall putting my oxygen mask on first. And it was transformative. My connection with everyone and everything around me became deeper and more enjoyable because I was living again. Many little projects and businesses came and went as I went through the process. I sold skincare, health-centered products, even started a little mail-order tea and cookie business with a friend. The last one was a lot of fun to create, but trying to individually package cookies and teas and pack them up for shipping in my dining room with toddlers running around, well, another project that was a lot more fun in conception, but not fun in reality. They say when you are really living in your true self, you often go back to things that made you happy when you were younger. So when we moved back near my hometown, and a friend from high school was starting a catering business, I offered to come help part-time. I worked primarily in catering and as a pastry chef before I decided to stay home. I just wanted to dip my toe back into the chef world. I thought for sure that I had been out of the game too long. It took one shift to help me remember how much I loved it. A few months later, my friend also opened a restaurant and asked me to be the company's pastry chef and create a menu. I had always dreamed of doing that, and I was so excited for the opportunity. I jumped right in and I started creating. I said yes to a new adventure. It's been one of the most fulfilling projects of my career, and I love going to work every day, making something I am passionate about. I get to be a part of creating a special memory for each and every one of our customers. Oh, I started singing a little bit again, too, with a friend's band. I'm hoping this year to start performing again. I don't know how or when right now, but I know that singing brings me a lot of joy, and I need it in my life. It's possible, mamas. It's possible to dream and put those dreams into reality. I feel like I'm just getting started. It's okay to try out new things, or even old things, and fail. But don't stop trying. Fight for that little voice inside of you that is whispering every single day what it is you truly want. Trust it. Live in your truth. Do the work. And the pieces will start to fall into place. Sincerely, Dottie Delphinium.
Thank you so much, Dottie, for that story. I have absolutely nothing to add other than if you have a story that you want to tell that can be an encouragement to other women, record yourself telling your story in a quiet place like your closet, and send it to me by email. Lily@lilyfieldschallenge.com. That's Lily@lilyfieldschallenge.com. Next time on Sing With Your Feet, we are going to celebrate Valentine's Day. We're going to talk about how you can be your own intentional Valentine this year, showing yourself love according to your love languages. I also am going to have a special guest next time, the formidably zany Matt Kugler, who is that dreamy voice you hear singing throughout the podcast. I want you to get to know him because he's awesome. You can find me on social media as @LilyFieldsChallenge. Send me your stories to Lily@lilyfieldschallenge.com. You can also follow the show on social media @SingWithYourFeet on Facebook and Instagram. A very special thank you to Seven Production for the use of the song La Joie for the intro and outro of the show, to the aforementioned Matt Kugler who sang it, and to Claude Ekwe who wrote it. This is your fairy godmother signing off. Remember, it is never too late to start singing with your feet.